I'm going to attempt a different method here, or a different topic. Genesis 1 in the very beginning. And my wife did the typing for me on this very kindly, and she titled it Before the Flood, but I didn't. I titled it, What Was It Like? And that's the whole idea. What was it like? What was Earth like before the flood? Mankind has imagined, and scientists have postulated about the Garden of Eden, as well as the rest of the world, was like before the flood. Today we would like to present one theory to you to imagine, to think about. Dr. Carl E. Baugh, Ph.D., is a scientist, researcher, and founder of Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. His theory about the beginning is compelling. I will be reading sections of this book, Panorama of Creation. In Genesis 1, chapter verses 1 and 2, in the beginning Elohim created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. Now, I would like to just to add a little bit here. I have heard of, and there are those that believe that the earth was made without form and void by the adversary, and that our Creator created it initially perfect and beautiful, and the adversary ruined it or wrecked it. So if he created it perfect and beautiful, the animals and perhaps even people on it, and the adversary ruined it, our Creator had to come back, and he hovered over the deep, the waters, and he ruined it all the way back to water, and our Creator started all over again. But I wondered about that for quite some time, because then the adversary's back in the Garden of Eden in the second renewal of earth. Why would he allow him in if he ruined his creation the first time? So that's my thinking. Each one makes their own decision. Some creation scientists contend that the word was, which is hayatha in Hebrew, meaning beginning, is used here in this correct translation, which is the King James, and is only translated became. In rare occasions, if the context requires, the gap theory also requires the phrase tohu bohu to mean ruined or desolated. But that the King James translation, without form and void, is the proper meaning. So the word was is in the King James. Some of the other translations have became, okay, which means, and the word became means that what was it before it became. So each person decides which one they want to follow. Now in paragraph 1, page 46, that's in my book. I want to read that to you. And this is in reference to Genesis 1, verses 1 and 2. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So, and the Spirit of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. So we're talking about the deep and the waters, all the same thing. Studies done by renowned physicists such as Dr. Russell Humphrey show that each molecule of water, and this is very interesting, we wonder where magnetic flux and magnetic fields come from. Each molecule of water, okay, has about it or around it and is part of it a small electromagnetic field, very small. When these molecules, now you also have to bear in mind how many molecules of water are there. Now, that's beyond calculation. You would have exponents out to the thousands. So when these molecules are aligned, all aligned the same, or say half of them, or 2/3 or a third, the resultant is a composite electromagnetic charge of the molecules of water that are aligned. So that all sounds like, what are you talking about? All he is saying is that if you align all of these water molecules the same, then their electromagnetic fields are additive. So you may go from something almost unmeasurable to something that's absolutely enormous. Much like I liken it to heart tissue. They have taken heart tissue, a little very small piece of it in a petri dish, and the heart tissue is actually beating. But when it all gets together into the heart muscle, they all beat in unison together. It's very interesting. When all these molecules are in composite alignment, you have the composite energy of all the molecules. We understand that. The earth received very special attention from Yah. Yah was going to create man. Why? Because he was going to create man and woman out of the earth, which was to be their home. The earth was where Yahshua was born, a woman, shed his blood, was resurrected by Elohim, his father, to defeat the curse of sin. It appears the enemy's defeat will take place on earth. On earth, Yahshua will take his place as King of Kings for 1,000 years. But his rule doesn't stop at 1,000 years. At the end of the 1,000 years, the adversary's left out. And then there's another episode of evil for a very short time, and then the curtain comes down. Our Creator's had enough. The books are open, and judgment comes. John 3, verse 16, for Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. So what I'm starting out with is the water. This creation, earth started out as a watery mass, and we'll see why he did start this out as water and just not dry ground. And I'll also read some other scientific data with regard to water and where all our elements we have today has come from. All creatures require water. Human bodies are between 39 and 75% water, depending on our age. I think as we get older, we tend to dry out. So maybe we become a bit more desiccated. I don't know. I like a lot of water, but not all of us like water. Water was the first material made, and for good reason. Joshua told the woman in the well, or at the well, John 4, verse 14, whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give shall never thirst. The waters of baptism for repentance, Mark 16, verse 16, he who believeth and is baptized shall be saved. And the river of life flowing from the throne of Elohim, Revelations 22, verse 1. Now, these are all very important. Our Creator made the earth out of water, actually water first. The two elements, hydrogen and oxygen, they are primary elements. An element is something that cannot be reduced down to a simpler compound or component. It is in its simplest form. Hydrogen and oxygen are extremely important. Now, when we look at, I think it's chapter 3, or third day rather, our Creator gave limits to the water, and he brought forth dry ground. And he called the dry ground, or dry area, earth. Now, I used to think that the earth, as our Creator was making it, had solid form in it. Ground, rock, stone, whatever you want to call it. But there is another aspect that one must consider. And why just water? There's a professor, his name is Edward Bordeaux. He's an emeritus professor at Louisiana State University. He has demonstrated from the technical literature and science studies in science that with appropriate energy, pressure, and radiation gradients, all of the elements known to science can be transmuted from water by nucleosynthesis. Now, the word transmuted means you are adding pressure, forces, gradients, outside forces, and the hydrogen and the oxygen can be changed into different forms. Higher forms, mostly always higher forms. So they're finding out that we have all these elements and minerals that can be derived from water. The firmament. Genesis 1, verses 6 through 8. And Elohim said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And Elohim made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And Elohim called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day." Yeah, that thing's going off a lot. There's all kind of studies or alerts going on. Now, Dr. Bow, in his studies, and he works along with about 3 or 4 other scientists, creation scientists. These are all creation scientists. They are not. They may have come from secular science and found out that the secular science does not have the answers. Too many unanswered questions. But that may or may not be so. But these creation scientists are truly scientists. They have their PhDs. They're very smart people, but they study. That doesn't mean people who don't have a PhD are not smart. To understand the scripture, it does not take a college graduate education, a baccalaureate, PhD, or master's. It takes the Spirit of our Creator to understand. And He's not a respecter of persons. To continue on, Elohim said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And Elohim made the firmament and divided the waters which were above the firmament from the waters which were under the firmament, from those which were above the firmament. And it was so. And Elohim called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day." Okay, it is obvious from the biblical context that this firmament included two composite layers of water adjacent to each side, with a firmament in the middle. Now, the firmament in the middle, I liken it to an Oreo cookie, to make it as simple as possible. You have the cream sandwiched between two ends. Now, on the top, you have, which is all part of the firmament, just like the ends of the Oreo cookie and the cream in the center is still part of the cookie. You can't take that apart. It's no longer an Oreo if you take it apart. What he's saying here is that when he created the firmament, he also created at the same time the area from which we live, or the atmosphere just above the surface of the earth. And there was water below. In fact, that there was water under the earth. Because if you read the account of the Noachian flood, he broke up the fountains of the deep. And that's what caused, they say, that's what caused these great valleys in these very high mountains, because the water underneath was brought to the surface. And he also opened up the windows of heaven. So we can see, possibly, that the firmament above, the waters above and the waters under the earth, literally flooded the earth, the surface of it. And keep in mind that this firmament is a composite. The firmament, rakia, that was divinely put in place on day 2 was put there in order to focus the benefits of universal radiation. The firmament, universal radiation, the firmament is held to be localized in a thin microcosm complex of crystalline structures suspended directly above the Earth. Dr. Bordeaux, again the same doctor, he has his PhD in chemistry and chemical physics, demonstrated for the first time in history that the combination of thin silicate sugilite could be held in suspension in the magnetic flux above the Earth. They have been able to prove this. They've demonstrated it. Now, he's talking about this here silicate sugilite. Sugilite is a crystal, okay? And sugilite was first discovered by a Japanese, what do they call, petrologist. A petrologist is the one who studies rocks. I guess it's similar to a geologist. But a geologist, I think, is more subterranean, and a petrologist is more above board. At any rate, what they found out is that there is material that, in combination with hydrogen and water, which is the oxygen and the hydrogen, it will suspend above the Earth in a certain intensity of magnetic field. Now, this sugilite, one may say, well, where did this come from? Well, our Creator made it. But you also want to take you back just a little bit. The most common material or mineral on the surface of the Earth is silicon. That's the most common. Okay. Now, the other thing is, well, how did it get there? Now, these professors and these here creation scientists are extrapolating, like the best you can do with trying to understand what the life was like or the Earth was like before the flood, is to extrapolate. They extrapolate that when our Creator brought about the flood, He opened the gates, the windows of heaven. Okay, that's silicon or silicate that was above the Earth, came down, and it loaded the Earth's surface with silica or silicon dioxide. Now, but backing up to the firmament, Earth's local crystalline canopy, in its physical design, would uniquely absorb and transmit the radiation of the stellar bodies and their that were later placed in the universal expanse. These stellar bodies were made to be a mass energy and radiation specifically designed to benefit the planet Earth and its inhabitants. So what he's saying is, in the firmament, at the very top of the firmament, you had a crystalline structure that filtered out, I believe it filtered out all of the short waves. Yes. And allowed all the beneficial long waves radiation. When we say radiation, we're not talking about gamma rays and X-rays. We're talking about light waves and other forms of energy. There are radio stars and there are luminar stars. Radio stars typically are a longer wave. Luminar stars have both long wave and short wave. Some of those waves are damaging to the body. But before the flood, those waves, that type of energy was filtered out, and we did not have it here or did not receive it here on Earth. Or those inhabitants of Earth back then did not experience it. Let's see. Now, I want to just touch on a little bit about the word rakia. Now, the word is used in the Hebrew to describe the firmament. The word used in the Hebrew to describe the firmament is called rakia, R-A-Q-I-A. Hebrew scholars recognize that the word rakia means to compress or pound out or stretch out the arch of heavens in thin metallic sheets. I say metallic because hydrogen, which is the most common, is considered to be a metal. Okay? It is considered to be a metal. And in the chemistry, hydrogen falls under the category of metals. But the hydrogen, along with the silicate and what this doctor is saying is pure crystalline water, or water that is frozen without contaminants in it, is what gave us, or gave the earth, its great advantage in the beginning for the first several thousand years. However, according to our research, the elements used in the firmament were the pristine elements of water with a thin layer of crystalline metallic silicate, sugilite, bound with hydrogen. It was not until day number 3 that Elohim created the rest of the elements. This element he created on the first day, the first and second day. The third day, he created the rest of the elements out of the hydrogen and the oxygen, is what they're speculating here. Many very fine scientists, creations, researchers have envisioned for decades that there was a greenhouse effect before the flood, and in all probability there was. They envisioned that these water vapors, perhaps in cloud form above the earth. However, if we simply use the vapor form of water, the scriptural mandate in Genesis 1:14-18 cannot be fulfilled, because it says that the stars were set or enhanced, added in full dimension to this firmament. If the firmament cover had simply been water vapor, the stars would only have been in approximately 80% of their detail as we see them today. The original Hebrew word used is the word Nathan, N-A-T-H-A-M. The literal translation means that they were added and yielded in full dimension within the firmament. The only way this could have worked is for the word rakia to have a literal meaning. Okay. On day number 4, when the sun was created, the energy of the sun upon this hydrogen would have caused a gentle pink glow. At high noon, there would have been a light pink coloration in the sky. At sunrise and sunset, there would have been a vivid pink coloration, and at midnight, there would have been a magenta pink sky. In other words, the sky before the flood was never totally dark. The biblical record states that Elohim made the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. We have assumed for centuries that the greater light was the sun, and that the lesser light was the moon. The moon certainly bears an impact on and to some degree affects the earth. Now, we all understand that. However, the moon does not always remain in visual form. The lesser light ruling the night, consequently, was not only the moon, even though the moon certainly has a purpose in the orchestrated creation. The lesser light ruling the night included transfer of energy from the day side of the earth along the lines of this rakia firmament. The electromagnetic energy was carried along the elemental lines of near metallic hydrogen, which was like what we would call today fiber optics. So to give you just a quick rundown on fiber optics, unlike metallic or copper lines that we use our data for. Fiber optics uses no electromagnetic forces like current flows. It uses strictly light, and it's pulsed light. So, but the problem with light is bending it. How do you get it around corners and up and down? So they use fiber inside of cables, very, very fine fibers. And the light will travel through the fiber. And we have fiber optics coming up our driveway, and the source of the light for that fiber optics is 5 miles away. The light travels unrestricted at about 300 million meters per second down the line. And it gets into our garage, and there is an access panel, or I should say, an interface that takes those light pulses and converts them back into DC energy, pulsing electromagnetic energy, and that's where we get our data into our house. The advantage that phone companies have using fiber optics is the lightning strikes don't bother it at all. It doesn't damage it. Whereas if you're running copper lines and lightning strikes, or you have a surge, then that surge runs right along the copper line right into your house and can cause a lot of problems. But anyway, that's what fiber optics is like. And what this doctor is saying is that outer crust, or outer edge, I shouldn't call it a crusty, very thin outer edge, and they feel that this very thin conductive metallic layer was about 2 centimeters thick, which is not very thick at all, but enough to filter the light, to keep the short waves of light from getting through and allowing the long waves to get through, which were the beneficial. But at the same time, it acted as a conductor of light all the way around the Earth. Now, they also surmise that this firmament was 11 miles above the surface of the Earth, which would take it to about 105,000 feet, figuring 11 times why would I have come up with that? 11 miles times 5,000, more like 50,000 miles. Anyway, you guys can do the mathematics. So the evening on the dark side, what we would call the dark side of the Earth, was actually not dark. And it wasn't just the moon providing the light. It was the light energy from the sunny side of the Earth being transmitted around to the dark side. So the light was transformed all the way around the Earth in varying intensities. Let's see. This would cause twilight glow at night side of the Earth, while on the day side of the Earth, the greater light would literally rule the day. The statement is made that the light ruled the day. Scientists and researchers are finding that the most important color in the spectrum is pink. Pink light. This is the color that is produced by energized hydrogen. They find that the plants grow better under pink light, and that individuals respond more positively in mood to pink light. Researchers have found that when a person is affected by the right spectrum of pink light, the brain secretes norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is a natural tranquilizer and neurotransmitter. Before the flood, man was dominated by various spectra of pink light. The tranquility of this environment offered him the ability to have his brain work at maximum efficiency. And not just the man, also the woman. So, at any rate, the firmament made this possible with a gentle pink glow in various spectral forms, with the greater light ruling the day and the lesser light ruling the night. Elohim made a wonderful creation, and man has ultimately received the full benefits of it. Now, brethren, there are two other sections to this, And it would have just taken way too long to cover all this, and you can only sit here so long and absorb so much. But there is another section that I'll do it in part two. I'm going to take Angelo's lead and do this in various parts. There's another part to this, and in their studies they have found that the pressure on the face of the earth was much higher than it is now, and the oxygen concentration was much higher. And that he also goes on and speaks about and talks about how the earth was warmed. And we're assuming that the sun was the primary source of heat for the earth and pre-diluvian. But they're saying that is not necessarily so, because they have been able to recreate in a very small form, what they call a breeder reactor that they feel was toward or in near the center of the earth. And this breeder reactor would use the minerals and the elements in the earth along with the reactor itself. It was atomic, it was nuclear. And the idea of a breeder reactor is it fuels itself. It keeps going. It just keeps going and going and going. And it warmed the surface of the earth from underneath. And they're saying that is why the earth gave off a mist from the ground up, and the plants. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention to you is in part two and part three, we will touch upon the dinosaurs and why some of the plants they're discovering in fossil form are so enormous. They have moss. We have moss today, which grows anywhere from 18 to 16 inches. He gave the name of it. I'm not going to get into that now. But that moss, they feel, was descended from another moss, pre-diluvian. This moss grew to be 100 feet tall. And some of the animals were absolutely enormous. But after the flood, when these plants were no longer able to survive because the light spectrum changed and the pressure changed, the food supply for these enormous animals dwindled, and therefore the animals themselves went away. They died. So I like to go over part two and part three at another time, but this is something, brethren, for you to think about. There are a variety of explanations or descriptions for pre-diluvian life on Earth, and this is another one for you to think about. You can think about it and pray about it, but no matter which one, you can't get away from design. You just can't get away from this being here by design. If you think about evolution and you think about Darwin's theory of evolution, and what does he call each step? He calls it in evolution. It is yes, mutation. And the idea that we came from amoebas, and then amoebas into fish, and then fish somehow into monkeys, and then monkeys into man. It becomes evident after a while that there is almost a disdain for creation being designed, or this being by design. And I once listened to a very prominent evolutionist. I think it was the mathematician, the recent one that died, Hawkins. And one of them had to write only, I think he was paralyzed. I don't know if it was him or another one that had a similar name. But anyway, he was in an interview. This is back in the late 60s, early 70s. And the interviewer said, well, why did the scientific community embrace Darwin's theory of evolution. And he said, well, he says primarily, he said, the theory of evolution does away with God, does away with Elohim. And therefore, if we do away with him, he said, and God is fading away like the smile of the Cheshire cat. It's just slowly fading away. But what that opens the door for, this is what the man said, for us to follow our own sexual mores. What was his name? Huxley. So we have to be careful, because the appeal is not for what is right with evolution. The appeal is for what is wrong. It's the sordid side. It appeals to the sordid side of man, and that is so easy to appeal to. It so becomes so standard. So, brethren, I don't want to belabor this too long, but the other thing I wanted to mention is that Dr. Carl E. Baugh is a PhD. He has written a book called The Panorama of Creation. He has his own institute in Texas. But you can get this book. You can probably get it at the library. And read it. Read it. And you don't have to accept everything as being dogma, but it sure does give a very good explanation as to why or how the earth was pre-diluvian, and why man's life has been shortened. Our Creator said your lifespan is going to be dropped to 120. David said 70. And we're lucky if we get to 95. Some make it to 100, but a lot of people die long before they even get to Social Security age. So unlike it was then. All right, thank you.